Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, I want to start with a scenario that I think is going to feel uh, painfully familiar to a lot of you listening.
I think so.
You've read the headlines, you've seen all the hype, you finally decide, okay, it's time. We are going to modernize. We are going to integrate AI into our business.
Yep, the big leap.
So you buy the expensive software license, you get the whole team hyped up, you feed it your company data, and you wait for that magic insight. And it just spits out absolute nonsense.
That's the moment of truth that very quickly turns into a moment of panic.
Exactly. It feels like buying a Ferrari and then filling the tank with sand. So today we're looking at a discussion from Mvicto Tech Insights that focuses specifically on Singapore SMEs and this exact problem.
Right.
But they aren't really talking about the AI software itself. They're talking about the, let's say, unsexy, often ignored work that has to come first. They call it digital spring cleaning.
It's such a great metaphor, isn't it? Because spring cleaning is something we all know we should do.
But we put it off.
We always put it off until you literally can't find anything anymore. But in the context of business AI, Mvicto is arguing that this isn't just about being tidy. It's about whether your business is actually capable of surviving this next technological shift.
The stakes are definitely a lot higher than just, organizing a messy kitchen cupboard.
Yeah.
What really struck me in their material is this idea that we've all been sold a vision of AI as a magic wand.
You just wave it and efficiency happens.
Right. But the reality is that AI completely lacks what we would call common sense.
That's the critical distinction. We tend to anthropomorphize AI. We think of it as a really smart intern.
Okay.
But if you hand a human intern a file where, say, half the client names are spelled wrong and the addresses are 3 years old, that intern will probably pause and say, hey, this looks a bit weird. Should I check this?
Right, because they have context.
AI doesn't have that context. It just assumes every single piece of data you give it is the absolute truth. So if you feed it messy, contradictory information, it doesn't question you.
Just runs with it.
It just processes that error with incredible speed and, crucially, with confidence. It scales up your mistakes faster than any human ever could.
So instead of creating one wrong invoice by hand,
Yep.
you've just automatically generated 1,000 wrong invoices in, 3 seconds?
Precisely. That is the garbage in, garbage out reality. And Mvicto Tech Insights makes a really strong case that for Singapore SMEs, data quality is the silent project killer.
The silent project killer. I like that.
Yeah. We spend all our budget on the engine, the shiny AI tool, and absolutely zero on the fuel.
So let's dig into how this happens, because
Okay.
I don't think any business owner wakes up and decides, you know what, I'm going to make my database a complete disaster today.
No, it's an evolution of the mess. It happens slowly. Think about the typical life cycle of an SME here in Singapore.
Okay.
Day one, you're a startup. What do you have? You've got a laptop and an Excel sheet. And it's beautiful, it's clean.
It's the single source of truth because it's the only source of truth.
Exactly. But then you survive. You start to grow. Maybe in year 3, you need accounting software, so you buy some legacy systems.
Sure.
Then in year 5, you hire a new sales director who insists on using a specific CRM. Then the marketing team starts using a totally separate tool for their email blasts. Fast forward 10 years.
You've built a Frankenstein's monster of data.
You really have. And the core problem is none of these systems were ever designed to talk to each other. So you end up with what the industry calls data silos.
The source used a really specific example that I thought was perfect. The split office, right? Between Jurong and City Hall.
Yeah, that's a classic one. Imagine your sales team is out in Jurong and they're working out of the new shiny CRM. They're updating client info every single day.
Right.
But your finance team is back in City Hall and they're working on a local server that hasn't been properly updated in 6 months.
So sales knows that Company A moved offices last week, but finance thinks they're still at the old address.
To a human, that's just an annoyance. But to an AI, that looks like 2 completely different companies.
Oh, I see.
Or even worse, the AI might hallucinate a reality where the company exists in 2 places at once. Now, if you ask an AI to predict your logistics costs based on that data, the prediction is completely worthless.
And it's not just about where the data lives, right?
Yeah.
It's about what it actually looks like. This is the unstructured data problem they talked about.
Exactly.
And I feel like this is where the human element really messes things up.
Right.
We're terrible at being consistent.
We're inconsistent by our very nature. The naming convention issue is a classic. In your invoicing system, a client might be listed as Mvicto Tech Pite Ltd.
Right, the official name.
But in your CRM, a salesperson just typed in Mvicto Technologies.
And then on the marketing email list, it's probably just Mvicto.
So now you have three entries. To a basic algorithm, those are three distinct entities.
And that matters because...
Well, if you're trying to run a customer lifetime value analysis, the AI splits that customer's revenue across three different customers. Suddenly, it looks like you have three small, unimportant clients instead of one really big one.
Wow.
And that changes your whole business strategy. You might stop prioritizing them because the data incorrectly says they aren't that important.
That's a scary thought. Bad data literally leads to bad business strategy. And we haven't even touched on what I'd call the digital attic, all the scanned PDFs, the JPEGs of handwritten meeting notes.
That's the unstructured clutter. And a lot of businesses have gigabytes of this stuff. You know they're thinking, oh, just scan that contract and save it in the folder.
Yeah.
But unless you have a very sophisticated and very expensive OCR, an optical character recognition layer, all that information is basically invisible to the AI. It's dark data.
Okay, so the diagnosis is clear. We have silos, we have inconsistencies, we have dark data. And the big takeaway is you simply cannot AI a bad database.
You can't.
So how do we fix it? The source outlines a 3-step framework for this digital spring cleaning. And I want to get granular here because this is where I think people get stuck. Step 1 is the data audit.
This is the investigative phase. And I want to emphasize, this isn't just about looking at your server. It's about looking at your company's actual behaviors.
It's asking, where does work really happen?
Exactly. Is the critical client list really on the company server? Or is it actually on the sales manager's personal Dropbox? Or, and this is so common in Singapore, is the real business negotiation happening over WhatsApp?
And that data never even makes it into a system.
Never. That's shadow IT. So the audit is about mapping that whole territory. The source suggests using the IMDA Model AI Governance Framework as a kind of checklist.
That sounds a bit bureaucratic.
It sounds it, but it's actually a very good roadmap for asking the basic questions. What data do we have? Where is it living? And who owns it?
So you have to find all the skeletons in the closet before you can even think about cleaning the closet.
You have to know how big the mess is first.
Okay, so let's assume we've done that. We've found the data. It's everywhere. Step 2 is standardization and deduplication. The source calls this the boring but vital part.
And it is boring. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is where you have to make some really hard decisions about establishing a single source of truth.
This sounds less like a technical problem and more like a political one. If the sales team says the address is X and the finance team says the address is Y, who wins?
That is exactly the point. It's a governance issue, not a tech issue. You have to establish a rule. You have to say, for customer contact info, the CRM is the master. If finance has something different, finance is wrong. And then you have to enforce that hierarchy.
And Vicar brought up some very specific local nuances here that can trip people up. Things like UA numbers or NRAC data.
The unique entity number, the UEN, is a classic example in Singapore. Some systems require it with dashes, some without. Some people enter it with a space in the middle.
Right.
But if you want to merge two databases later on, that UEN is your primary key. If the formatting doesn't match, the whole merge fails.
You literally have to go in and make a rule like, from now on, we are stripping all dashes from UENs across the entire company.
Yes. You standardize that format. Same thing with addresses, block numbers, unit numbers. If everyone enters it their own way, you can't sort your customers geographically. It sounds so pedantic, but AI thrives on pedantry. It needs that structure.
Okay, so we've audited, we're starting to standardize, but now we hit the wall that I think stops most SMEs in their tracks.
The legacy system.
The legacy system. They look at that accounting software from 2015. It works, but it's old. It doesn't have an API, can't connect to the cloud, and they think, I can't afford $100,000 to replace this whole system just to get clean data out of it.
That is the rip and replace nightmare. And fortunately, step 3 in the framework offers a lifeline. They call it the digital bridge.
They're talking about RPA, robotic process automation. Now, when I hear robot, I think of, a mechanical arm in a factory. That's not what this is.
No hardware involved at all. Think of RPA as a software bot that just mimics a human user. So you have that old legacy system where you have to manually type in data, and it has no easy way to export it to your new AI dashboard.
So normally you'd hire a temp to sit there and just copy-paste all day long.
Which is slow, and it's full of errors. An RPA bot is a script that effectively logs in as a user. It clicks the buttons, it copies the data from a field, it opens your new database, and it pastes it in.
And it does that thousands of times an hour.
Perfectly, without getting tired or making typos.
So it literally acts as a bridge between the dumb old system and the smart new one.
Exactly. It lets you keep your old legacy software running so you don't have the huge disruption of changing your core operations, but it liberates the data so your modern AI tools can actually use it.
But is that really accessible for a small business? It sounds like expensive enterprise tech.
It used to be, absolutely, but the cost has come down significantly. There are now low-code or even no-code RPA tools where you can almost record your actions on the screen and the bot learns to repeat them. It's much, much cheaper than replacing your entire ERP system.
That's a crucial distinction. It's a patch, but it's a permanent high-tech patch.
It's a strategic patch. It buys you time.
So we've connected the pipes, the data is flowing. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, especially here in Singapore. Security, compliance,
Yes.
because you can't just do whatever you want with people's data.
No, you definitely can't. We operate under the PDPA, the Personal Data Protection Act, and this is where the spring cleaning metaphor kind of shifts to hazardous waste disposal.
The source highlighted this concept of purpose limitation. What's that?
Right. When you collected a customer's data 5 years ago, you probably collected it for one purpose, to send them an invoice.
Sure.
You did not collect it to train a machine learning model to predict market trends. So if you use that data for a new purpose without their consent, you are technically in breach of the PDPA.
That's a really fine line.
Yeah.
So cleaning your data also means, what, tagging it? Knowing what you're allowed to use it for?
Absolutely. And you might need to mask or anonymize the data before you even feed it to an AI. The AI needs to know that a customer bought a product in Jurong. It doesn't necessarily need to know that customer's name is Mr. Tan, and here's his NRIC number.
This leads right to the security trap that the source warned about. And I feel like this is the one where everyone listening needs to lean in, because I see people doing this every single day.
The free tool trap, it's so tempting.
Yeah. You're sitting there with a messy Excel sheet of customer contacts. You're like, I bet ChatGPT can clean this up for me. So you copy the whole list, names, emails, phone numbers, and you paste it into the free version of a public chatbot.
And you have just committed a massive security foul.
Why, though? It just feels like a chat window.
Because on the free tier of almost all of these public large language models, your data can be used to train the model. You are effectively publishing your internal customer list to a public algorithm.
Wow.
There is a non-zero chance that your sensitive information could resurface in someone else's query down the line.
That is a complete nightmare. So what's the alternative? Because we do want the AI's help to clean this stuff.
You have to use what are called enterprise-grade environments. Mvicto mentions platforms like Azure OpenAI or Google Vertex AI.
What's the actual difference? The interface looks pretty much the same.
The difference is the contract. When you pay for the enterprise tier, you are paying for a walled garden. Your data is encrypted. It enters the system, it gets processed by the model, and then the output leaves. It is contractually guaranteed not to be used to train their public model. It never leaves your control.
So rule of thumb, if you're doing digital spring cleaning for your business, do not use the public trash can. Get a private industrial shredder.
That is a very good way to put it.
Okay, we've covered a lot of work here. I mean, audits, standardization, RPA, legal compliance. It sounds expensive and exhausting.
It can be.
So we need to talk about the payoff. Why should an SME owner, who is already incredibly busy, stop everything to do this?
This is the carrot. And honestly, I think this is the most exciting part of the Mvicto report. They argue this isn't an IT project. It's actually a business development strategy.
And they linked it to ESG reporting, environmental, social, and governance, which, I'll be honest, sometimes just feels like another buzzword for the big corporations.
It feels that way until you try to work with those big corporations. If you want to be a supplier for a multinational, or if you want to win a government tender in Singapore, those entities are now under immense pressure to report their Scope 3 emissions.
Which means?
That means they need to know the carbon footprint of their entire supply chain.
And you, the SME, are their supply chain.
Exactly. They're going to start sending you questionnaires. What was your total energy usage last quarter? What are your waste disposal stats? Now, if your data is in 5 different silos and a bunch of handwritten notes...
It'll take you 3 weeks to answer that one email.
And by then, they've already moved on to your competitor who answered in 3 hours.
I see.
But if you've done the spring cleaning, if all your data is digital, structured, and centralized, you can automate those reports. You can provide that transparency almost instantly.
So having clean data becomes a real competitive advantage. It removes the friction between you and, frankly, the big money.
It signals that you are a modern, low-risk partner. It says, this company knows their numbers. That builds a huge amount of trust. So the payoff isn't just, my database is tidy. The payoff is, I can now bid for contracts I could never have even gotten close to before.
That puts a completely different spin on it. It's not janitorial work. It's actually preparation for growth.
That's exactly it.
So let's bring this home for everyone listening. We've thrown a lot of concepts out there, silos, RPA, PDPA, ESG. If you turn off this deep dive and go back to your office, what is the very first step? Because fix everything at once is not a valid strategy.
No, that's just a recipe for burnout. The advice from the source is to start small. Just identify one data silo.
Just one.
Find one specific point of friction in your business. Maybe it's that classic disconnect between the sales and finance teams we talked about, or maybe it's the inventory list that never ever matches what's actually in the warehouse. Pick that one problem.
And then just apply the framework to that one thing. Audit it, standardize it, and decide on the single source of truth for it.
Yes, prove the value on a small scale. Show your team, look, we cleaned this one thing up, and now we save 5 hours a week not arguing about invoices.
Yeah.
Once you build that little bit of momentum, you can tackle the next silo.
And Mvicto Technologies apparently has some templates for this.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
They have templates specifically designed for Singapore SMEs to help with that initial audit and the governance checklists, so you don't have to invent all the paperwork from scratch.
Good. Use the tools that are available. Don't be a hero and try to build it all from memory in a spreadsheet.
Definitely not.
As we wrap up, I want to ask you for a final thought. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of this, but what's the bigger mindset shift here?
We often treat being organized as a personality trait, like, oh, Susan is very organized, or Dave is a bit messy. We treat it as a personal preference.
Right.
But in the age of AI, organization is no longer a preference. It is a core capability.
It's infrastructure.
It is. If data cleaning is the absolute prerequisite for using AI, then the discipline of organization is a primary competitive advantage. So the provocative question I'd leave for you is this. What does your company's data hygiene say about your future readiness? Are you washing your hands, or are you just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best?
That is uncomfortably accurate. Crossing your fingers is not a strategy.
It really isn't.
Well, on that note, I think I have some files on my desktop I need to go delete, or at least rename properly.
Start with the desktop. It's a good place to begin.
Thank you all for listening to this deep dive into digital spring cleaning. Good luck with those silos, keep your data clean, and we will see you next time.